I think she's got the right idea. Oh, man. Oh, shut up. I'm sorry. Starting to wake her up. All right. So tonight I'm going to try and just draw for the fun of it tonight. It's been a very long day. I don't know about you, but yeah. So it's actually been a very long week. So I'm going to go ahead and start here with just some. Let me go ahead and say this again here real quick. What do I feel like drawing today? You know, sometimes I get on here and I'm like, oh, I have all these ideas. I'm gonna just draw something and have some fun with it. But now I've got to wait to get another camera, a secondary camera, so I can have a secondary, output showing on the screen. Because I have an idea that I was gonna do, and I don't know if I can do it tonight. Maybe I can give it a try. So I have these dice, and the idea was to mount another camera down here. And you guys may have seen these. I don't know how good this is going to show up. So these are storyteller dice, and very blurry. Sorry about that. And they have different things on them. I've got like an assortment of them. Some of them are larger, and they've got like different things. Oh, that's a little more clear. But these things have different things you can roll. And the idea behind them, the reason I got them, was because I wanted to use them in tandem with your average gaming dice. And so that way, you're just seeing the icon that was a B. So the idea would be like, oh, okay, I roll the dice. So the idea I had, and there was this whole setup that I'm hoping I can get together, because it's what I really want to be able to do, is to draw on just, force myself to engage in something as opposed to drawing the same old things over and over again. Because I draw a lot of skulls, a lot of dragons, a lot of things like that. And so I kept thinking to myself, well, what else could I do that would be a different sort of direction for me to go in. So right there, the last icon was a bumblebee, and the number that I picked up from there was 4. So then I would be drawing 4 bumblebees, and well, what are they doing? Well, or no, what are they? So I'd roll a dice that has to do with character class or something. Oh, they're knights, or they're jesters or something. And so the idea is to just, have fun and do something like that. And I don't know, man, it's such a funny thing, because what would a bee look like? Now, okay, so now I'm going to kind of mess with this here a little bit, so bear with me here. So let's say it's a little, you know what, let me try something here first, because I know I got to sketch this out first, but I'm just going to go real light with this. Okay, it's already saved. So what, if it's a little cute bee, so maybe he's got, a little head here. And I forget exactly, because this is more of a spider body, right? So, because I think bees just have 2 main sections. This is so stupid, because I look at bees all the time. I see honeybees, I see bumblebees, I see all these things like that. And I'm thinking to myself, what does one look like? And I don't want to mess with trying to look up stuff right now, but they normally have a stinger of some kind. It's a super generalized bee. I'm going to be thinking of the honeycomb cereal. See here. It's funny, because sometimes when I'm drawing, I'm making the same faces. I'm like, or something. It's so odd. Let's see here. So he's got 2 little antennae on here like this. Maybe he's got something of a Norman helmet sort of thing going on here with this. And how many legs do they have? They got 6. Yeah, all insects have 6. And he is not an arachnid. He is an insect, a bug. So we're going to give him these little grippy hands like this. And okay, so maybe he's got a shield here. We'll mess with that. We'll give it a little shield boss here. And maybe he's got, maybe he doesn't have a shield or a sword. Maybe he's just got a long lance that comes out like this and goes up. And it's got, maybe is that a halberd, or would it be a spear? So a halberd is kind of like a long. I think, if I'm remembering right, it's been so long since I've done a lot of this stuff that I forget exactly what the what the nomenclature and the names are for a lot of these things, but you know. So that would be the idea, is to draw, like, if I did that, then I'd be drawing, you know, a few of these, and then, you know, deciding, okay, so maybe I'll just run with this for now. So I'm going to go ahead and ink this in a little bit, and see here. And so, you know, it's one of those things where a lot of times I really get on my own case, because I don't draw for fun as much as I would like to. There's a lot of times whenever I cut myself off from drawing something just for the heck of it, because I'm like, well, you know, I should really be focusing on my projects or something, and the truth is that every little bit of drawing helps, even if it's just messing around, it's just kind of blowing steam off, even if it's not the most accurate thing in the world, you know, to be drawing. You know, because, like, I don't know. Okay, so I'm just gonna have two little grippy things like this and a thumb, and then, you know, the one thing I've not gotten the hang of is being super exact. Unless I really concentrate, it just doesn't flow like a normal drawing would when I'm trying to draw elements like this. So it helps me to be a little bit more loose in my details. And try not to think too much about it, because it's too easy. Like the shield is actually a little more oblong than I want it to be. That's okay. You know, I tried recording. Well, there was a video I did earlier. Me and my buddy Phil have this thing called Conversations, and we do it like every Wednesday, unless, you know, all hell is breaking loose for me with scheduling and freelance and stuff. And I was like not even completely there. It looked just like kind of like right now. I mean, I'm not high, I'm not drunk, I'm not anything. Yeah, it's St. Patty's Day, whatever. I don't do any of that stuff. I worked at a bar for many years, so I had my fill of inebriated and high people. I don't really have a real problem with it at all. I don't care, but it was one of those things where the timing was weird, and I was pretty sure that most people that were watching the show were like, God, what is wrong with this guy? Is he all right? You know, like. Just like, you know, probably were wondering what was wrong with me, because I didn't feel like I was really totally tuned into what I was saying or doing or anything else like that. I just felt really weird. All right, so we're gonna do some stripes on him like this, and then we'll do the arm there. Yeah. And maybe just a little bit of armor on him. Yeah. Oh, so you and I did not leave open. I'm going to blame you too. Some area for the wings. So, and maybe they're buzzing really quick, you know, something like that. So that would be what he would look like. It came together better than I thought it was going to, just for a stupid little drawing. So sometimes it's fun to do stuff like that. I remember telling a lot of my students, you know, I taught from kindergarten to only 2 times I taught kindergarten. And the rest of the times were all, thankfully, third through 6th grade. And, you know, they'd get really frustrated with things. And so, you know, when they were getting frustrated, I'd show them something loose like this on the board that I would draw and say, you notice how I'm not really treating anything super valuable. I'm drawing things in because it's fun. It's because this is not precious. It's not meant to be precious. You need to remember that whatever you're doing can just be for the fun of it. It's just for relaxing and everything. And I had a headache earlier, in fact, and I was kind of on the fence about drawing this, because sometimes, you know, it's really weird. I have a YouTube channel where this is posted, and probably where you're watching it right now. And when I post things on there, I'm like, oh my God, this has to look really good. But the truth is that sometimes it's just fun to draw something and just have at it and not worry about it, not think about it, whatever the case is, and just let yourself, again, have fun and be free with it. And I think part of it is because and correct me if I'm wrong, you've probably seen this, right? Where, you know, if you have 1 ounce of creative effort in you, you probably follow people online on Twitter, TikTok, whatever, and you're seeing these immaculate sketchbooks, these time lapses that are just stunning. And I don't know about you, but for me, it kind of makes me go, and the stress starts to go up, and I start to get really angry. Like, not at them, but at myself. Like, why am I not drawing right now? And it's okay to not be drawing 24/7. You can. I'm not that level of pro, although I'd love to be that. But then at the same time, it's like, should I really want to be that? I mean, like, is that just a bit much? So, you know, and then I have to really, I really have, really have to kind of put myself in place on that and go, well, maybe that's not such a good idea. I don't know. And the thing is that there's so much pressure with so much social media out there. You find yourself just freaking out and thinking, well, I've got to draw the most perfect thing all the time. And it doesn't have to be that way. It really doesn't. Let me see here. So I'm going to go a little bit bigger with this. Maybe there's... So sometimes, and when I was a kid, I used to draw all these weird little creature guys. And I don't even remember anymore how I drew them. Most of them, do you remember the big red creature that was on Bugs Bunny? That was like a big hairy guy, and I think there's an episode where they tried to give him a haircut, and by the time they were done, there was just sneakers left over, a pair of eyeballs. It was very surreal. I used to draw these characters that were, man, this is going to be really rough, but they were like these characters that had, they were a similar thing like this, but this is going to be so weird, drawing this like this. So they have these, like sort of, they were silhouetted the same way, right? And they ended with these clawed feet like this. And I don't know where I came up with this. I just always thought, I was like, well, what would live in the forest, right? And I think I imagined them as being like little baby Sasquatches or something like that. And sometimes they had horns on their heads. Like that. And they were almost always really, dark in color and this sort of thing. This is just an outline for this one. But you never see their arms. They had them. But the way I would draw them is occasionally, like maybe there's, maybe there's one here that like, for some reason, there's one reaching out like this, and it would, be just trying to get like, I don't know, maybe there's a little flower down here. That it was trying to reach for. And I don't even remember where these guys came from. Sometimes they'd have little eyebrows. But they were creatures that at one point I decided, I was like, maybe I'm reimagining these later. And you know how sometimes you'll, I don't know if you've gone through this or not before, but sometimes I'll have creatures that stick in my head because they inspired me. And one of them, when I was younger, like one of the very first things I really loved, my first book, the first book I owned that I bought with my own money was that, and I don't even know if they have these anymore, but the Scholastic book fairs. So you take like, you're like a baller with like $10 because you can get like 5 books or something like that. They weren't that expensive back then. I think most books were like $1 or something like that, or $2. I have a real weird memory on that. I don't know if the base that I lived on got a discount on these things, and so they were able to provide more books or whatever. And you could also earn credits too. Like I used to read books so much more. I have a ton of books. Who here, just thinking about this, like who doesn't have a little bit of book debt that they've got? There's a whole row of books. The back part of the studio back here is kind of a library. It's got games and it's got books, and I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 actual shelves filled with books. And then I have these really cool comic book boxes that are plastic. They're made by BCW, I believe, and you kind of snap them together like Legos. They're a trip. They're really fun. But I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 of those. Technically 6, because one has my comic books in it, and I've read my comic books. But all of that stuff, I haven't. Almost all of them, I haven't read. They're just books that I finally got out of storage, and I've been. Some of them, I take that back. Probably 90 to 80%. Some of them I've not read. The rest of them are like older books, like my old D&D books, or Dragonlance novels, stuff like that. That stuff I've read. That's not that bad. But I end up, the weird part for me is that I end up with these books that I haven't read, and then I get to thinking to myself, I feel bad. I'm like, oh my God, I'm neglecting my books. But I've started, spending more time where I want to be able to read the books. I had time when I was a kid, man. Like I used to, it's so weird. Like when I was really reading a lot, I had this, there was this window in my room, and it opened up to this little wooded area back in the back, right? And it was always so cool because this was probably my favorite bedroom and everything else like that. And I had some curtains here on the side and that sort of thing, and a rod that went across. And I had a little TV tray thing with a television. It wasn't that big, but it was old school with the dials on and everything else like that, and the rabbit ears on there. And so like I had that there, and then underneath it I had a VCR that always blinked at exactly midnight or noon, depending on what was going on. And this was the very first time I had cable. I had the rabbit ears, but I just liked the way they looked. I mean, we had cable going in, so I had one of those little RF adapter things for the coaxial to go into, because you had that plugged into where like the UHF screws were on the back. For anyone that may be watching this that's like, what are you talking about? Ask anybody over the age of 29 and they'll probably tell you. So anyway, but I used to have this small shelf over here, and it, old habits die hard. It was sectioned off. I don't know what happened to this. Right here in the foreground was this little full-size bed I used to sleep on, and I had these pillows. I remember that. I had pillows set up down here because on top of my... I'm all over the place tonight, sorry. On top of my VCR, I had my Sega Master System. Love that system. I had little controllers over here off to the side and everything. But here I had all my books. All my books were in here, stacked up high, and I had stacks of comic books here. And then I remember in this fourth one over here, oh, that's right, yeah, over here I had like those serious books for when I was going to be an artist. They were bigger, thicker books, and they were heavier. And I had assorted toys and action figures sitting out here, and my dinosaur models were out on this thing, and just all these. I had a TIE fighter here. Actually, it's the TIE fighter that's actually up on my ceiling now, the very same one. It's in the back. It was one of my favorites. A little model that I had, and it had a little stand on. I've long since lost the stand. And then I'm trying to remember. Oh, I had a radio. I had a radio here. It was an old school kind of boomboxy thing with a cassette deck, and I had a little readout on that. And then I had a poster up here. It was, which that's also, I don't know that I ever hung that thing up. Maybe I didn't. But it was this really bizarre Hobbit poster that, this is before the movies and everything, way before, right? So it's this bizarre illustration style that I fell in love with. And it's just odd. It's very 1970s, very 70s to 80s, kind of like that wild, like early D&D pen and ink sort of style, but more refined and just gorgeous. And on it, maybe you guys know what I'm talking about, but it has, it has Gandalf standing here like this, kind of with this sort of thing, and he's got this long beard, and it's for the Hobbit. I remember that because he's standing here like this, and he's got his pipe. Well, and as he's standing there, he's also like, maybe No, it was the Lord of the Rings. I'm trying, like, I'm really confused because I remember that there was a Hobbit sitting over here. So that was, maybe that's Bilbo. And then over here, there's another one, and he's got what looks like Sting or something. And he's sitting here, and they're on like this little mountain thing. And then down here, there's like all this decorative border around it, right? And then the decorative border is showing orcs and Mordor and all this other stuff. And down here, you've got this little creature in a boat, and that's Gollum. And then back here, you have like, a serpent in the sky, so it's Smog back here. And then I think a ring wraith and a fell beast here. And then there's like, I think the Far Off Lands or something like that. The Undying Lands are back here. It's a wild painting. And it's just this, I say painting, it's a pen and ink illustration that's, I think, colored in watercolor or gouache or something. It's just freaking gorgeous. But anyway, getting back to the books, this is where I used to keep all my stuff, was in here. And then, like, I don't remember what was back in this corner. I know I had another, like, box thing here that had, like, it had games and stuff in it or whatever. It was kind of nuts. My bed was never this neat. It was always, like, really jacked up. The sheets were always, I got yelled at for that a lot. But thinking back to that was when I really first started getting into all this stuff, like books and role-playing games and all that. And that was a really big influence for me. It was also the very first time I started drawing dragons. When I was a kid, I drew dinosaurs, I drew robots a lot and stuff. And this is this is going to be terrible. I'm going to say that now. So I got into drawing dragons, and somewhere I know I kept this thing. I'd gotten for that Christmas, I'd gotten my first roll of newsprint. Now, newsprint is not archival. It's not the kind I had this big sheet, and I drew Smog from the Rankin Bass. I think it was it was the Hobbit. Yeah, the animated The Hobbit. And if I don't know if you guys remember that or not, but he has a very distinct look where he has these very, like cat-like eyes, and he had like, the pupils that were slit, and they drew him in this freaking amazing way where he had like, the cat-like kind of weird nose like this. And I remember that I believe he had the eyebrows that were on fire, and he had these high cheekbones, and it was so wild because it looked like he was supposed to be able to talk. And I think that's why they did the cheekbones. And even like how he, like I remember how cat-like the dragon looked, and I'd never seen anything like that because, all the other artwork I'd seen up to that point that did have to do with dragons was either in comic books or in some fantasy stuff that I had, and they all looked very reptilian or like dragons or iguanas or something, and they looked very different. And if you look at old Ray Harryhausen stuff, which I was a huge fan of, that's kind of what it looked like. And I remember that, without pulling up the reference online, he had like these gigantic sort of like sideburn things that were going on, like on the sides and stuff like that. And I think he had a crest going down the center. Yeah, it was that. So it was like, just gonna make layers left and right on this thing. I think because I remember that he had those big ears, right? Yeah, he had huge ears like this. They went down, and then he had the cheekbone here like that, and it went down, and he had these massive sideburns. I remember years later thinking how much that looked like, how much that reminded me of the Thundercats, and I remember that he had like this sort of nose that was very cat-like up here in the front, and he had this mane that came off the back like that, and I'm trying to remember. I don't remember if he had anything. No, he didn't. I remember it was. I think they made the snout a little bit longer, but he had. It was shaped sort of like this, so the fur came back a little more, jawline came down, and it was something along this line. And I remember the reason I remember the profile to some degree was because I remember he had, they kind of showed that he could see Bilbo with the light shining. So it was the Hobbit. Now that I'm thinking, because it was the whole thing where he was using the ring to hide and that sort of stuff. And he couldn't see him, but he could light up his eyes and you could kind of see around his treasure hoard in that area and everything. And I remember how from the side it looked like this weird hybrid of like a cat, a wolf, but I just remember the long sideburns on him. And that was one of the most gorgeous looking dragons that I ever remember. And even the way that like the fire was drawn coming out, like that was the first time that I ever thought about how fire would come out of a dragon's throat. And like years later I was obsessed with that sort of stuff. Like I remember reading all this like fake scientific discovery about dragons and how, well, they would ingest certain things, like certain rocks that could be that they could regurgitate, and there was an embedded piece of flint that organically grew in their throat. And when it hit it, it would ignite, it would spark, and when they kind of belched forward, a gas like a methane combination or something like that, it could spew out as flame. And then there was this gorgeous explanation that as they would suck in air and it would come in and it would ignite here in the throat and then shoot out this way, and the sparks would, as soon as it hit the oxygen outside, it would ignite, and they'd have to almost kind of like push out and slam their mouth shut to stop the flame. And it was just such a wild way to think of dragons. There used to be, I don't know if you remember this. I'm going to save this, even though these are all weird. I don't know if you remember, but there used to be a magazine called Inquest Magazine, and I think it was published by the same people that did Wizard Magazine, but it was a gaming magazine. And so it had an article in there with supposedly it was a letter from the last surviving draconologist, and his name was Dr. Vladimir K. Kapusnik, and he lived in Moose Jaw, Saskatchewan, in Canada. Back then, I actually tried writing to the guy. I never got anything back. Supposedly, there were people that did reach out, but if you can Google it, it's super obscure. There's like a few Angel Fire and GeoCities pages, and in the Wayback Machine, there's a few that actually still have that letter that he wrote into the magazine, supposedly. I don't know if it was a big prank. I know the issue didn't come out on April 1st or anything. And there was this whole to-do about like dragons being real, and how when he was a young boy, he had seen the last dragon that he knew of in North America die, or it was close to dying. It was mislabeled a winged garter snake in a traveling circus. And that whole idea just sparked something with me that, could you imagine a world where that's the last dragon that is saved, and it's just viewed as an oddity, like, well, here's this winged garter snake or winged lizard or something, and it's just been mislabeled, and the poor thing, could end its life there. And not celebrating that, but saying that a fantasy story could be born from that, where maybe some kids or somebody decides to take pity on the creature and tries to raise it, finding out that it's just a baby, and it turns into like sort of a Clifford the Big Red Dog sort of scenario. And I remember thinking to myself, like, this is a really weird and true story. When I was in Italy, I was real young, and we had a house that this would be kind of looking from the front. The house was pretty tall. It had a roof that went back, and then a roof that went like this. Now, just like any house, right? But there was a small attic window up here, and there's a whole nother really creepy story about that one. And there was one window back here in the back of the house, and then the rest of this was like stone, right? So you have this house, and there's stone, and then there was a wall back here, because there was a path that went back here, and it ended here, and then there was like a backyard. There was like some shrubs here or something that was back around this area, and then there was a fence line way back here, and what all I remember is that there used to be, the mountains were back here along the back. This is along Piancovallo. They were these massive, you could wake up in the morning, you'd see, we knew we were at the foot of these mountains, and they were just old and worn down and just gorgeous. But off in the distance, you had all these trees, right? And they were back here, and there was this road right here, and then there was these fields that were also back here. Now here This is where our yard was. There was another fence that went back here. There was some foliage here, and there was this weird perspective thing that happened because it looked like the farmers' fields were right there behind our house, but they were a little further out. And to give you an idea, if you saw a car out there, the car would probably be no bigger than something like this, right? And my mom used to see some weird things. She saw a car one day drive out there into the field, and two guys in suits got out, and they pulled a guy out of a trunk. And I guess they beat him up really bad in the field, and they took something from him and then put him back in the car and drove off. My mom was home alone. I was at school. My sister was at school. My brother hadn't been born yet, and my dad was at work on the base. So we're all on base, and my mom's at home in this in this house, and there's no neighbors. Like, there was a city that I say city, but up here there was a small town called Piancovallo, and it was like way up on the side of the mountain. Now that I think, it was just so wild to see that. But I remember that there was like a small church here, and then there was all these other houses and stuff. I guess this town got in trouble because they were, years ago during World War II, a lot of them were sympathetic to the American soldiers that had hidden there, and they caught some wrath from the brown shirt fascists toward the end of the war for the role they played in hiding and getting American soldiers back to the Allies. And at one point in time, some of this town had been destroyed, but it used to be way up there. I think there was a road that went this way. I don't know how you got to the town. I always asked Mom, like, can we go to that town? Can we go to that town? But there was that town up there, and then down the way, if this is the side of the house that we're looking at here, and then the front is over here on this side. So over here, so to finish this up, I'm jumping all over the place. This was just a lot of like grass and bush and stuff here by the side of the house. And there was a pathway that went around the house like this, right? Well, so down the way was Bedoya, which was the town that I basically grew up in around. And that town, if you've ever seen the movie Cars, it was gorgeous. It had like, you know, I'm not even joking. Like, memory may have colored this for me, but I know that I have photos. At that point in time, Mom was like hell on wheels with her 110 camera, and she would just take pictures of everything. And there is a photo of this beautiful, it's like a sculpture of some kind, a guy standing in the middle like this, and the fountain has some tears like this that are built up. And I'm trying to remember what this guy is doing. I want to say that it's like he's holding something, but I'm not really sure. Anyway, so there's this fountain that's in the center of the village, right? And it is literally a village. And my teacher, who used to teach Italian, lived in this town, and she was talking about how this statue and this fountain were built like right around 1621. So, and all the streets in that area were these cobblestone paths. And what I didn't know is that some of them were Roman. They were well-built Roman roads. There's no joke that these Roman roads don't fall apart. They just don't. And I remember the brickwork around the edge of it, how nice it looked. It was gorgeous. And if you look down, there was all the houses were just, they were, it's hard to explain. The houses, they just had their own thing going with them. The houses had their own thing going with them. They were like all these, like, no, hold on. I'm thinking wrong on that. The scale's wrong on this. So save this real quick here. So you could be here in the center of town, and I remember there were stalls all around here, right? Like around the actual statue. There'd be all these little stalls, and you'd see people, shopping and everything else like that around here. And the statue wasn't that big, but you'd see all these people around here in these stalls that people would set. It was almost like a farmer's market. And, you'd have produce and stuff like this out here, and then a guy selling it back here or whatever. And what I loved was, how the town, it had these houses that would rise up, and they were old, and a lot of them you could tell were like built upon one another. Sorry, my sketches are so rough. These probably aren't making any sense. Erase this and erase this. Okay, so going back, so again, you had this path, and there was a path that went back here, but the houses would be like, you know, these gorgeous homes that had like multiple levels to them and stuff, and I just remember thinking to myself like how odd they were, and how much the trees, like, it reminded me of the Midwest to some degree, because trees would be growing everywhere, and you'd see these gorgeous rounded doors, and the windows would be rounded at the top and stuff, and then maybe right behind there'd be another house with like a weird roof on it, and you'd see a chimney every once in a while or something, and then over here, like, there was another one. Like, churches were pretty prevalent around that area, and so you'd see some churches around there, that would pop up, and they'd also have weird roofs and tops to them. And I kept thinking to myself, I was like, I wonder if that was the original church, or they rebuilt it, or whatever happened. I don't remember, but so where am I going with this? So, oh yeah, so this was, I guess I'll just run with this story, because I don't remember what I was originally talking about. But the fountain looked something like this, and there was water that came from the base and would splash out and come down and splash out like this, down into that. Same on this side. And it came out, I think, on 3 points. It was really beautiful how it worked. And sometimes that's the stuff that I like going back and revisiting and redrawing, because I miss so much of this. It's weird. Someday I'd like to think I'll be able to go back and, visit Italy again and that sort of thing, and see my old hometown. It was really something growing up around this and seeing this sort of thing like that. It's weird to me because, there's things that at least for me, I don't know about you, but there'll be things that I'll remember from being a kid, and just the way that certain things looked. And the one thing that I remember the most was there was a window that the lady that taught my, the one class I had with Italian students, which was unique because it was on base, but there were some civilian kids there. And I don't know how that worked out, or they were just Italian kids, or maybe they were born there. I think that's how it worked. I think they were military brats too, but they had been there for so long, and that they spoke Italian even more fluently than I could ever hope to speak it. And so they, but I would sometimes get a chance to get into town and see things in a different way, because the Italian teacher invited us into town, and I remember waiting. We all took a field trip, and her family owned one of the older homes in that area, and she said that the house had been built right around 1100, 1200. Like, Bedoya was older than that, I think. I don't remember. So much of this is bizarre to me, but I remember that there was a window, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it looked like. I'm never going to remember exactly what it looked like, but the thing that got me was its shape, right? And this affected me for years. There was something gorgeous about this shape, and it was rounded at the top, and I remember that it had like this sort of stone thing going on, right? And it was edged out like this, and I remember that it was really worn. It had pits in it. It was really just a worn out thing. And the more you looked at it, the more you could tell like that the stone had been kind of cracked. Just this real heavy look to it. Is gorgeous though. And I remember standing out there in line and looking at this, because as I'm looking at the stonework on this thing, which isn't that exciting, I remember seeing how, here's this rough hewn shape, and the house, it didn't look like it had like how when you build a brick house and you have like, God, I'm even forgetting what that's called, but how you stick the bricks together. The house didn't look like that. The house had these bricks that just looked like they were laid on top of each other with no mortar in between them. And it was something to see. I wasn't quite sure what I was looking at or how it worked. I don't know enough about that sort of stuff. I've known bricklayers over the years and never asked them. But so, you had this, and then right up here, it got a little decorative, and there was sort of this shape like this. And I know that I'm probably doing a terrible job of generalization on this, but So, you had this like this, and then the bricks here, and they went out like this. And I remember how it recessed in just a little bit. It looked like this other window had been built within there, and it was much more rounded, and it had a center thing here, so it sat back a little bit recessed. The bottom was this thick white painted. It looked like white lead paint, like the stuff that used to be on my grandpa's fences. And I remember it had old glass in it. And I say that because when you see glass, because from what I understand, glass is still somewhat liquid and gravity affects it. And when you go into old homes and you look at it and the bottom's kind of wavy, it looked like that. There was also this thing, and I need to look this up. Maybe you know what this is. I don't know. But down here at the bottom, it looked like this circular kind of thing. That's why I think the window was kind of new. It looked like a ripple that was in the window. And I don't know. Somebody said, I bet that's something that's like a refractor for light. So when the sun came up, it hit that in that one part of the window. You couldn't really see through. It was really, really weird looking. It looked like when you drop a pebble in water and it ripples out. It looked like that. And I guess the light would hit that and then radiate even more. It would kind of dissipate the light rays into the room and spread it out more, kind of like a soft focus on a spotlight. But because the sun was out, you couldn't look in, but there were reflections of the trees and in the window, all around it, and the sky up here and clouds. But I also remember that the house was so old, they were fighting this all the time. They had these vines that were climbing up along the whole thing, going up and creeping out and everything else like that. And I didn't know what kind of vines these were at first. I was looking at them, and they said they were grapevines, but they were the kind that they weren't good anymore. Like they grew in the wrong place, and they were just kind of offshoots because they used to make wine there at that place. And years later, I became obsessed with this. I grew a grapevine for a while. I never made wine or got anything off of it. I think it was the third or fourth year. It was just here in my backyard. I got a pretty good harvest of some grapes, and they started to taste okay. And I guess they have to age. The plant has to age like 5 to 7 years or more before the grapes start to mature to something that's somewhat edible and okay. I kind of regret it because it grew so fast, and where I'd planted it was in a terrible location, and I still miss that thing. Somewhere I know I've got photos of it, but I don't know if they, or I used to have photos of it. When I had a hard drive crash, a lot of that stuff got lost. But I always loved how this thing hung off there and had these giant leaves that hung everywhere off this damn thing. They were just, and standing there in line, that for some reason just stuck with me, because it was the first time that I'm like, wow, I'm somewhere, my parents aren't here, and I'm just kind of chilling by myself. There were other parents that came for watching after kids and stuff like that, but I don't remember what my mom and dad were doing that day. Dad probably had to work. He never went with me on any field trips or anything else like that, and my mom normally did, but I think she might have had something to get ready for Girl Scouts or Boy Scouts later. She was a den mother for my Cub Scout troop and involved with my sister's Girl Scouts. But I remember this window, and I remember being able to look in there, and there was like the reflection of like this old dilapidated shed that was in the background back behind us. A shed or a stable or something, because the side was open, and it looked like there was hay bales in here, that sort of thing going on. And they did have a tractor. It didn't look like any American tractor I'd seen. It did have big wheels on it and stuff. It was old. It was really old, but I remember it had like a smokestack thing on it, and the chair was up like this, and then it had like a little hook down here, and like the world's tiniest little trailer was back here, back behind it. It was really wild. It's kind of cathartic to draw stuff like this. I don't know if this is something, I don't know if it's something that you guys do or not, but like, to just, even if you can't draw, you can always practice, and eventually you get better at it. I know, like, man, wow, look at that, 44 minutes have already gone by. So, oh man, I have when I used to live there with my parents in Italy, I found this recently. I have a lot of the things from when I was growing up. My parents would keep a lot of stuff that I had, and I featured this on my second Instagram account. I have two Instagram accounts. One is under the Artisan Rogue, and that one is just basically the art content I do and stuff. And then the other one is 80s Days Gone By, and it's kind of my love letter to a lot of things I grew up with and stuff I own and things like that. But one of the things I had was this little truck, and it had this rounded window sort of thing going on. It's very stylized. It had a little cab up here at the front, and it had like this big white grill in the front, and I think some lights here. So anyway, that's in the back, and it has like this little metal bumper in the front. Comes back like this, and wheel well here. It's a dump truck, right? So it's got its little detail here and little things like that, and it has its wheels, which is cool. And it had like, I think like little stickers on the side. It's got a sticker that I stuck on the top of it for sure, and then I think I put stickers like stamps here on the side and edges of it. Anyway, so this truck went with me to Italy. I had first gotten it when I lived in Schertz, Texas, and I was a little tiny kid. It's one of my earliest memories. I think it's my first dump truck. I'm almost certain of it because when I was asking Mom and Dad about it, that's what they told me. And it was one of the few toys that I was allowed to take with me to Italy. Because although we lived over there, the idea was we weren't going to take that much because back then a lot of times people would lose their stuff in transit. They would go to the wrong place, it'd get left behind, you name it. And this is, of course, way pre-internet, and things get lost now. So you can only imagine what that was like back then. And the Air Force, did the best they could for trying to keep our stuff together, but sometimes things unfortunately just got lost. Well, this little truck isn't that big. It's like this little tiny red truck thing, and the front grill of it, I used to like pretend like I was ramming things, and for some reason I thought like dump trucks had to ram stuff, and then whatever they rammed into, they picked up the parts and they put it in the back of their bed, and then they drove off. It made no sense. It made sense to me as like a 5 and 6 year old, but there was dirt on there that I couldn't figure out where it came from, and then later I got some clarity on that, and Mom said that the dirt had to have been from me playing on the side of the house. So if we go back and we look, not that. If we look here, so right here in this area, down here, there was like this little dirt area, and I don't know what it was, but I was allowed to play here because sometimes Mom and Dad would be doing yard work, and I couldn't go back in the fields. I wasn't allowed to go back to the trees or anything. I mean, it was a lot further than I thought. But I would be, just sitting down here in the dirt and, playing with my little truck. And just draw me in here real quick. And sometimes my sister would be over here just playing with her stuff, And we never really played together very much, but we played in, around each other and things like that. So we'd be playing there, and Mom said that I used to ram that truck and bury it and everything into the dirt. And then as time went on, the dirt just stayed there. And I was like, oh, I showed it to Mom. Mom was like, that's got to be dirt from Italy, because we had found it in storage not that long ago. It was one of the things that I couldn't believe I still had it. And there's like dirt encrusted all over that thing. Like here in the front, there's like dirt all over this, just all in here, just dirt everywhere. And I can later I'll make a video about this. Well, or you can check it out on my my Instagram. But there's dirt there. There's like scuffs. The paint is all messed up and scuffed up. I think this is all screwed up here. There's scuffs all on the front. It's a very well worn and well used toy. And the back of this has got paint chips everywhere gone on it and stuff like that. It's really just jacked up. But the dirt in the grill is just embedded in there. And from what my Mom was telling me, when I'd gotten it, it was just shortly before we left to go, which is one of the reasons, because everything else in Schertz, Texas got packed up when Dad got his papers to process to go over to Aviano Air Base in Italy. And so whatever toys I had, I took with me on the plane. Now, I remember the flight going down there, and I remember I couldn't get my toys out because I wasn't allowed to do that. It just stayed in the overhead. And when we flew down, or we flew over to Italy, when we got there, we had toys to play with, so the truck was definitely one of them. But I had completely forgotten that's where that was. And then when we came back from there, our stuff got sent to the house in Arizona. And and this is really wild, there were a couple boxes that just never got unpacked because we came back from Italy and we stayed for a little while in Kansas. Well, the stuff got sent down to that was Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Arizona, and those toys stayed stored because they were a little bit younger, or they were just, I think we just ended up with boxes that just never got unpacked. And somehow it ended up with a couple of other toys from that same time stored elsewhere. And I think I ran across it at one point in time. And even then, I didn't think too much about it. I left it where it was. And then fast forward, like literally a couple decades, we're looking, and it was one of the ones I found, and I couldn't believe it. I was like, it was like a memory, like just suddenly come back to life. And that's been a trip anyway, just going back through old stuff that I've had, because all that stuff has suddenly shown up out of nowhere for me, and I'm like, oh my God, this is legit. Like, it's like really catching up and seeing this stuff and going, oh, wow, okay, you're still here. And it was a nice feeling, but at the same time, it was really jarring because, you kind of see these things, and then to suddenly have something look exactly like how you remembered it. And I'm not drawing this to exactly how I remember, but this is just kind of an optimized view of what I remember in my head right now. The truck is actually sitting also in the back part of the studio, up on a shelf with a lot of toys from when I was a very little kid. And I'm very happy to still have this. There's a lot of times that people will end up buying, retro-based toys that are similar to what they had or whatever. But I had a really unique situation into the fact that, because we moved so much and my toys ended up packed in so many different things, some of those boxes and containers just stayed shut for years. And then when Mom and Dad finally were like, we gotta clean out this shed, we're tired of paying for the rent for it, I started looking through it and finding all kinds of things, like old yearbooks and horrible things like, old-fashioned stuff, which now is cool, but it was weird to me then to see all this stuff coming back. And it's been a nice trip. It really has, to see that stuff come back. And when I say that, it's because I felt like it was lost. I felt like I, had really lost that stuff. And that was such a weird time for me to go through because, when you suddenly find something like that out of the blue, you're suddenly remembered of it. And I know, like, when I found my my Hero Quest game was definitely one of those things that I really prized. I didn't know it was connected to Games Workshop. Later, I'd end up playing, like, Warhammer and stuff like that. So anyway, yeah, this little truck was just such a good memory for me. It was just this really cool little truck, and the interior isn't accessible. There's like, glass here, or plastic that is, and all that stuff. Yeah, it's just oh man, I don't know. Maybe I'm just feeling wistful tonight. Maybe that's what it is. Yeah, it's turned out okay. All right, let me shrink down this a little bit here and do some detailing on this thing. There's sometimes people will look at something old, and I never understand how they can get rid of them. Sometimes I had an uncle that would take me to car boot sales and, he used to travel and do flea market stuff and sell things at places and that sort of stuff. And, we'd always find really bizarre things. Just oddball things. And a lot of times it'd be like these big boxes, shoe boxes of photos or photo albums. Like, for some reason, the lady he married really had an obsession with buying old photos. And it's not like she was a scrapbooker or anything like that. She would just buy them and keep them and flip through them and be like, look at this family. And it's like, why? Now I kind of get it from a historical standpoint. Maybe, you want to save something like that because it matters to somebody. But then at the same time, it's like, well, why am I saving it? They clearly didn't care about it, so why? And for some people, it's not that important. It's the same sort of thing that happens. Like, you get people that they're like, all my pictures are on my phone, and then when they get a new phone, all those photos go away. If they didn't know how to back it up to iCloud or Dropbox or Google Drive or whatever, those photos are gone. And I've known people too that have made the mistake of like, they assume it's backed up somewhere, they delete it. And I often think sometimes because of the lack of physical media like film or something like that, that a lot of memories are lost and forgotten. But even in that note, recently Mom found some old 110 camera rolls. We don't know what's on them. We don't know. I mean, it could be old family pictures. It could be birthdays. It could be anything. I have 2 rolls of film from college. They're Ilford. It was the film I used when I was taking photography, and they specifically chose that black and white camera film and told Walmart, hey, don't develop this. We have kids that are developing in the lab, and they're going to come here and ask you to do this. Don't develop the film. So you couldn't get the film developed anywhere. Well, now there's like one place called the Dark Room. I think it's in Connecticut. They're the only place I've found that has really good reputation for sending back your photos and developing any kind of film. But it's been so many freaking years that I think to myself, I'm like, well, there's no point now. But there's still this, morbid interest I have, well, I know this film is probably terrible and what's on it. But, nothing lasts forever, but when you can find it and it shows up for you all of a sudden, I know for myself, I get all like emotional and like kind of, wistful about it because it's just beautiful to find something like this still intact. So anyway, I am going to leave it here with this drawing on my little truck and stuff. Sorry if this wasn't the most stellar artwork you've seen, because Lord knows this is some award-winning stuff, right? People are going to be knocking on my door to get me into Spectrum's art annual. Oh, man. Yeah. So, anyway, thanks for watching. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate that. And for those of you that have also been following me like on other social media and stuff like that, I am now officially on a ton of it. I reactivated my DeviantArt. So if you want to search for the Artisan Road, you can find me on DeviantArt. You'll notice the icons down here below. There's Twitter, there's Podbean, there's Facebook, there's Instagram, there's Etsy, and then there's TikTok. And those are all the ones that I'm on, and I'm trying to do a lot on them now. So just a bit of an update on this while I'm going to say, well, I've already saved this, so I can just finish telling you guys this. As a freelancer, sometimes there's just time when time is down, and this has been a bizarre year for me in that, there's not a lot of work that's coming in on some things. Commissions are going to be open. I'm going to start listing that on my site tomorrow. I'm actually going to make the effort. Probably by the time you guys are watching this video, my Etsy store will be, it's already open, but it's going to hopefully be connected in some way or linked back to my website, or from my website back to it. And I'm going to be opening up commissions and, looking for projects to work on. I've really pushed hard this year. This was supposed to be the year that was going to be where I was going to really jump into doing art shows. And this is something I've covered, so I'm not going to repeat a lot of this. But because it's not working exactly the way I think it was supposed to go, I'm going to push a lot more. I'm going to put a lot more effort into what I'm doing. And I've got some deadlines. I know that I want to have the first issue number 1, issue 0 of Ardor is already out. It has been out for quite a while, but there's more that I want to write about and put together, and I'm still trying to make some decisions on that. I can talk about that in the next video when I've got a better idea as to where it's going and what I'm doing with it. And that's stuff that, because my first show is officially, as far as I know, COVID pending, going to be NakaCon 2021. Now, if you were reading anything about this on Facebook, you probably saw the NakaCon had a virtual con just this past weekend. And I don't know how it went. I'm ashamed to say this. I didn't really attend it or anything. I was busy doing some other stuff and just it slipped my mind. That and, the idea of a virtual con, I just don't know yet. I think it's a great idea. I think it could work. I think we're still a little ways from the full function of it really being completely as engrossing and enjoyable as a real convention. So they've moved the other convention, which is dubbed currently right now NakaCon Light, to September, well, Labor Day in September of this year. And then there's going to be another one in May of 2022. So they're kind of they're closing in on each other a little bit there, and that's okay. I plan on just attacking both shows with everything I have. I have a brand new booth set up. There's a sign design that I'm hoping to get made very soon, so I can get back in the swing of things with that. I have a lot more artwork to start showcasing, and I'm thinking that maybe for one last gasp for the next 3 years, starting in 2022, I'm going to try and hit as many big shows as I can. I'm going to really make a big push, and it's going to be all or nothing to see what I can do. But in the meantime, I'm going to keep growing what I have, all these online elements, and see what happens, because it's anybody's guess what's going to happen. Are the online sales going to dry up? Is that going to go away? What ends up happening? For me, they've barely yet begun. I've sold some stuff online, but the big challenge now is getting enough advertisement and enough people watching to know that I even have these places available. And a lot of my product still isn't online. I've got a lot of originals and other items that they're not on there yet. I've got some great t-shirt designs. I've got some great mug designs, and a lot of my reproductions, almost everything from Ardor is on there. So I'm really excited about that. So if you have a chance, go check that stuff out. Again, thank you for watching. I am Mario the Artisan Rogue, but you probably already knew that if you've been following this channel. Please feel free to share these videos if you think they're even worth anybody else's time or anything else like that. I think they are. I like being able to talk, and boy, do I like to talk. I did another video earlier that was an hour with me and Phil just talking to people watching the video. Oh my God, man. I think some of this has been like chicken soup for the soul for me, or vegan chicken soup for the soul. Just because I do miss interacting with people and being able to have fun doing shows and drawing and all this other stuff. And doing digital art is fine. I'm going to start doing some traditional stuff as well too. The desks and this whole area of the studio is finally cleaned up enough for me to start pumping out more video. And I've got a backlog of videos that are going to be going up on TikTok, little 60-second snippets of old work. So if you want and you are down with the TikTok, then go and find the Artisan Rogue on there. And every day I'm posting up some different clips of past work I did. Right now I'm posting up some stuff about an unfinished and never published story about a samurai, I believe it was called Akanubo. Well, I know that's what it was called. I think he's the character that was named Akanubo. To give you some background on that I haven't been able to cover because it gets erratic talking that quickly, and I find myself talking like a really broken version of the Micro Machines guy. It was a comic that I got commissioned to start doing and working on, and I didn't really know what I was doing. I have always loved manga and anime, but he kind of wanted a Western feel to it because he liked a certain style that I did, but he also wanted it to have a very, Japanese look to it as far as its art. And it isn't my favorite art, but there's a lot of good things in there that came out that I was really enjoying. And then at one point, the project just kind of petered out. I never heard back from him. I wasn't necessarily ghosted. It just died on the vine. Because I kept asking him, well, are we going to do any more? Are we going to do any more? And it just died. I think he either left his job, lost his job, or changed jobs. And then one thing led to another, and it was never finished. So for the first time ever, I'm putting the stuff up on there. It is my artwork. I'm not sharing the storyline or anything else like that. It's just, you can extrapolate that from the images on there. But I'm sharing that, some Pagan Zoetrope pages that I picked out that were my favorites. The very first one I did on there was a quick review, an overview of this story called Invisible, which was published a few years ago in a comics anthology here in Kansas City called 86th. I think I have a copy of that somewhere. And so it was kind of a weird, I designed it so even though I didn't write the story, this other fellow, C.W. Cook, did. I took some of the characters that I had and twisted them into more disturbing versions of themselves. Not necessarily completely design-wise, but just to adhere to the storyline. And it was an interesting sort of side alternate dimension of Pagan Zoetrope, which was a comic, the indie comic I was doing at that time. So that has a unique place in the history of it, and I think I republished that story in one of my issues as well too. So, but go check that out, and if you get a chance, also check out my Etsy store. The links are down below here on YouTube. I have all that stuff linked down there. Thanks for watching, guys. I'm going to shut up now because I am truly freaking rambling. I'll catch you in the next video.